NCCI's preliminary estimate for the change in lost time frequency is a decrease of about 4%. This is very similar to last year. We had last year 4.6%, and the long-term average is 3.6%, so it's all right in line with each other. The 4.6% that you see for 2015 was revised downward since last year's AIS. We had an initial estimate there of about 3%. As more data becomes available, we do revise both our frequency and severity numbers, and that year seemed a little conservative when we took a look at it again. The industry's only seen 2 increases in frequency over the last 20 years. And the only significant one was coming out of the Great Recession during the recovery. There's no indication that the countrywide decrease in frequency is slowing down. But frequency across states can see volatility from one year to the next. And to smooth that, we like to look at a 5-year average. We've got the average annual change shown here from 2011 to 2015. Now, as you would expect, the vast majority of states have had declines in frequency. Any shade of red represents a decrease, and a dark shade of red represents a significant decline. Oregon is the only state that's had an average annual increase in frequency over these 5 years, and even that state, it's very small, it's essentially flat. Reforms and system changes in Texas, Oklahoma, and West Virginia have likely led to frequency changes well below the countrywide average in those states. NCCI's preliminary estimate of the average medical costs per lost time claim increased by about 5% to $29,100 in 2016. Now, had we taken a straight path to the 29.1, we would have seen a +2 in 15 and a +2 in 2016. But instead, we decided to take a detour. NCCI spent a lot of time analyzing that -1.4 that you see there. And we verified that it was legitimate and it was present in multiple data types. The medical data call pointed to a decrease in physician utilization as one of the drivers of the drop. And then we looked at the unit data and identified contracting as the industry group that was most impacted. Now, it's possible that 2016 actually looks higher because it's coming off of a low starting point. But we'll continue to monitor this over the following year, and we'll be publishing our updates to it, so be on the lookout for that as more data comes in. Now, the purple line follows the bars from the top of the previous slide, and we've indexed everything on this slide back to 1995. The green line is the cumulative change in the PHC over the same period. Now, in years past, we would have shown this same slide, but we would have used the medical CPI as our proxy for medical inflation. In 2016, NCCI did a review, and we looked at other possible proxies for medical inflation that might be more appropriate for comparisons to workers' compensation. And we determined that the Personal Health Care Chain Weighted Price Index, we're just going to call it the PHC, is most appropriate. Now, we recognize a shift to a new index is a big change, so we'll be publishing a paper in the upcoming months, so be on the lookout for that, and we'll have all the numbers underlying the PHC in the State of the Line Guide. Medical severity has increased about 227%, while the PHC has increased by about 66%. Now, what's interesting to note is that the PHC, just like workers' compensation medical severity, was different in 2015, and it presented its lowest increase in years. What's also interesting is that medical severity has increased at a slower rate since the recession. In fact, as you can see here, the periods from 95 to 01, 02 to 08, and 09 to 16 are all very different. Now, when we look at the change in medical severity, we like to divide it into 2 components, the change in price and the change in utilization. So the PHC is now our new proxy for the change in price. And anything over and above that is considered a change in the utilization of medical services. If you start with the purple arrow over on the left, you can see from 95 to 01, medical severity increased by about 72%. Prices increased by 16%, and the remaining 56% was an increase in utilization. From 02 to 08, prices increased at a pretty similar rate, but utilization, as you can see, slowed. And then over at the far right, from 09 to 16, the change in utilization was almost non-existent. Now here's medical severity across the states. This corresponds to the same 5 years that we showed you on the frequency slide, 2011 to 2015. There's more variety here, some increases, some decreases. Some of the larger increases are in Mississippi and Virginia. In Mississippi, large losses were the big contributor there. And then I mentioned that Virginia is now in the process of coming up with their own medical fee schedule, and that may ultimately put downward pressure on medical costs per claim in the Commonwealth. So what about indemnity? Well, NCCI's estimate for the indemnity cost per lost time claim was an increase of about 3% to $23,900 in 2016. Now, this is right in line with the past few years. It's a fairly moderate increase, and it's very close to the change in average weekly wage over the same period of about 2.5%. If we go to the next slide, you can see how the average change in indemnity cost per lost time claim has risen here relative to the change in average weekly wage over the last 20 years. Since '95, wages have increased by about 100%, while indemnity costs have increased about 145%. But just like medical, the rate of change has slowed since the Great Recession. And again, there are 3 distinct periods with different slopes. If you start at the left, from 95 to 01, wages increased by about 32%. But indemnity severity increased 33% over and above wage inflation. The period between 02 and 08 is less dramatic, but indemnity severity continued to outpace wage inflation during that period. And then look at the most recent period. It's the opposite. The opposite is occurring. Wages rose by 19%, while indemnity severity rose by only 7%. Now, if we look at the state level, the average change in indemnity severity over the last 5 years, just like medical, is a bit of a mixed bag. Oklahoma, Kansas, and Tennessee, they all had reforms that lowered indemnity benefits in their states. In Missouri, Senate Bill 1 shifted payments from the Second Injury Fund to private carriers, and that's put upward pressure on indemnity severity in that state. And then if you look at New Mexico, large losses have impacted their indemnity severity.